Welcome to this video, which is going to look at your first paper. Now, the aim of this is just to talk you through what the paper will look like. You've already seen much of this paper because you did it for your mocks. Now, the first thing to look at is it's an hour and 45 minutes long, and it's actually split up into 3 sections. So if you think about that, it's 35 minutes a section. Each section is worth 32 marks, and there's 4 marks for SPAG in the first section. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you through it. We're going to talk about the different types of questions, what skills you might need to do, and how to approach it. So let's have a look at the, first thing actually before we go anywhere else is just to have a look at what you need. You will need a calculator, you will need a ruler. There are going to be maths questions, and if you haven't got a calculator, you're going to put yourself at distinct disadvantage. So make sure, please, that you have got the equipment. We cannot provide you with rulers and calculators. You've got to provide those. Okay, so this is the first section. This is changing places, changing economics. It's basically the human stuff. It's about cities, it's about towns, villages, and the economy. And you'll probably start with something fairly simple like this. You've got a photo here of a street market in central Norwich, and it's basically saying 2 other features of central business district, CBD, in the table below. CBDs, city centres, and then hopefully what you do is you pick up the large covered shopping centres and restaurants, theatres and cinemas. Then, next question, many CBDs have pedestrianised areas. Now, one of those questions where actually you may not remember actually being taught that. What you have to do is you have to use your common sense. Think about Witney, think about those pedestrianised areas and what they're like. They tend to have no cars, they tend to have street furniture, they might have cafes on, things like that. Think of sort of like Costa down by that part of town. Right, now as we move on, you will come to another question. This one is an OS map question. Now there's going to be a few OS map questions, not hundreds, but there'll be some. In this paper there's 2. So you need to be able to do some basics. You need to be able to give 4-figure grid references, you need to be able to give 6-figure grid references. If you're not confident doing that, look on the Padlet. There's information, there's a link there to the BBC Bitesize, and that will basically talk you through and give you a test and make sure you can do it. So you've got the map. What's worth looking at? Well, you've obviously at the bottom got some numbers. These are easterlies, these are northerlies, so we use these when we're giving 4 and 6 grid references. You'll notice that it's marked on an area, so it's worth just having a look and seeing what that area is, and you will see, pardon me while I just get this right, it's allocation of a new retail park. So what are we being asked to do? So it says, use map evidence, complete the blank spaces below. Map evidence means things like road names, towns, whether it's next to a river or things like that. And as you can see here, the questions are fairly straightforward. So, name of the road to the northern edge of the proposed retail park. So again, there's the thing, here's the road. And if you look, you will see in a couple of places the name of the road, the B1460. Second question was the direction of the proposed retail park from Whitby Pier West. So find the pier. Pier looks like it is over here, and I'm going in that direction. So again, you need to know your compass directions. Never eat shredded wheat. So that way is southwest. The final question is asking me the distance in a direct line from the centre of the proposed retail park to the post office in Ruswarp, grid square 8809. So, it might be a little good time to do this. 88, so I'm there, so I'm somewhere over here. 09 is there. Now we always give the bottom left hand corner of the grid square. So the grid square is going to be here. I can see Ruswarp there, and I'm looking for a post office. Now, just having a quick look, and I'm struggling to see it myself. Took a bit of finding, but it's there. Now what I need to do is I need to measure the distance from there to there. Now, what you need to do is get your ruler. Once you've got your ruler, you will then use the scale. And the scale bar is down here. Okay, and if you calculate that, I haven't got the ability to use a ruler on this, but it looks like to me it's about 1.25 kilometres, but you'd need to use a scale on that one obviously to make it exact. So once you've done that, we can move on. Okay, then we get to the next question. Many large retail outlets prefer to locate new stores away from CBDs. They choose retail parks located on the edge of towns and cities. Two problems that retail outlets have in the CBD, and there's two attractions of retail parks located on the edge of towns. Now what you're doing here is it doesn't mention it, but you're using your Bluewater case study. You've got to be able to apply this sort of things. So what are the problems in the CBD? It might be high rent, it might be traffic, it might be lack of parking. Retail parks, on the other hand, might have more room to expand, it might be cheaper land values, it might be near motorways, there might be, I'm trying to think what else might be good about them. Again, might be near other big shops which attract people. So that's the sort of things we're wanting. Companies always need to know the threshold population of stores. So he's asking you to define a key term. So again, it's worth making sure you've got a list of keywords. Now it says, give one reason why this is important. So it really wants you to say what the threshold population is and why. Now, threshold population is the minimum number of people in the local area required to break even. And basically, if you don't break even, you're going to go bankrupt. So that's really what it's after there. Okay, then we're moving on. Discuss the impact of change in retail location on both people and the urban environment. Now, the thing about this question is to break it up. So it's talking about the movement of stores, okay, and then it asks you people and environment. Now, it's a 6-mark question. So the way I would do this is split this up into 2 3-mark questions. So, how will it affect people? So, if you move stores from the centre of town, that's going to be bad because obviously people in the centre of town are going to lose their jobs. Fair enough. Also, perhaps those people who don't have a car are going to find it harder to get to shops. So that's going to be a problem for them. On the other hand, it might mean there's less traffic in the centre of town, so that might be quite good for people. In terms of moving to out of town, well, that's good for people who live there. It might be good for people who have got cars and got easier access. It'll be good for people who can work there and live there and get jobs. So there's advantages there for people. Now the important bit is, having covered the people, you must not forget to do the urban environment. So the urban environment is going to be things like buildings, pollution and traffic. So we've already talked about less traffic in the city centre, in the CBD, but there'll be more traffic on the outskirts. We're also probably looking at building on a greenfield site, so that means fields are going to be destroyed, and that might be bad for wildlife and habitats. So we've got those issues to consider as well. Okay, so that then moves on to the first of the 8-mark questions. Now the 8-mark questions here, they've given you a map, they're looking at Jakarta, and they're looking at a slum called Jembatan Besi. And your first question is describe the location of it. So you've got a black dot of it here, nice and easy, it's there. Basically what you need to do is you need to locate it, and it's 1 mark, so it's really only 1 sentence. And I probably would talk about it being northwest of the CBD, and because I'm a good student, I'm going to use a distance. In fact, if I measure that, it's probably about 3 kilometres northwest of the CBD. I might say it's located to the east of Road 1 by the looks of it, the main road, or it's located next to the river. Any of those should get me the mark. So hopefully, again, just struggling with this a little bit, sorry, to apologise. That's nice and easy. Okay, next question. Now, example loves these proportional circles. They love them because they allow you to have to think to get the data, but they also allow that sort of question about the advantages and disadvantages. And of course, the advantages of proportional circles, they show two types of data. They show the size of the population in this case and the percentage of where they're coming from. So, compare the population in 75 to 2015, use a scale and key to support your answer. It's a 4-mark question. So basically what you need to do is you need to compare the size of the circles, and you need to use this scale bar down here. So there'll be 1 mark for saying that the population has got bigger. There'll be 1 mark for saying by how much using numbers. The second thing will be using the percentages, and again your nice easy percentages here. You need to get 1 mark for saying that 50% of the residents in 75 were born in Jakarta, and that's increased to 75% by 2015. 1 mark for the increased, 1 mark for the actual numbers. Okay, then we get to the 8-mark question. Now, with this 8-mark question, I've given you some data. There normally will be some, and you can see the sort of problems that they've got there. Safe drinking water is poor, 50% legal electricity supplies, 30% formal waste collection. And then the question basically says, the challenges faced here are the same for every global city. Give reasons to support why you agree or disagree with this statement. 8-mark questions. Right, every 8-mark question, I suggest you have 3 paragraphs. Yes, I agree, paragraph 1. No, I disagree, paragraph 2. Paragraph 3 would be a conclusion. So, in terms of agreeing, I'd expect you to talk about Mumbai and talk about Dharavi and talk about how that slum also has problems with safe drinking, how also it has problems with waste collection and other problems such as flooding, which seems to be an issue up here, or poor quality houses. My next paragraph will talk about how actually Sydney doesn't have the same level of problems. It has some problems. It has problems with transport, there is a homeless problem, but it's a much smaller scale. And then finally, my conclusion would be, yes, there are similarities with global cities in low-income countries, but less so high-income countries. So that basic formula, 3 paragraphs, I agree, I disagree, my conclusion, if you can do that, you will find, okay, you do really well. And particularly on this one, just to make a point, it's got 4 marks. You do need to take care of spelling and grammar on this one in particular. It's the only one in the exam paper where spelling and grammar will be marked. Okay, so that's the first section. So the second section, nice easy one to start with. You've got a diagram showing the greenhouse effect, so you just have to add some labels to it, which should be nice and easy. Name 2 greenhouse gases, that's just checking your knowledge, so carbon dioxide, methane for example. 2 other sources, these are nice easy questions. In fact, you guys generally did very well on this on the mocks. So other sources could be farming, it could be cars, factories, anything. Right, okay, then we get down to a typical graph question. And it says, describe the changes in average global land surface temperature since 1850. Use figures in your answer. Wherever you see the word figures, that means that at least 1 mark requires you to use numbers. If you don't, you're going to have problems. General rule of thumb here is talk about the trend. It's increased. You might want to talk about where it starts. You might want to talk about where it ends. You might want to talk about the lowest point. You might want to talk about the point where it goes up to 0. But again, always start with the trend. You might say it fluctuates, it increases from 1980 onwards. You certainly want to make sure you've used numbers. Okay, can answer this in full bullet point. You can't have 1-word answers, but you don't have to turn it into an essay. Okay, so moving on. Again, you've seen this question before. This one though is a little bit tricky. I just want to do it here. Yeah, brilliant. Read this question, and when I'm marking this, I was a bit more generous, but just look at this. It says use map 2.3 only. So actually, this table 2.4, if you use that, is actually going to distract you. So this is an example where you must read the question. Describe the pattern of coastal risk areas from a 2 metre rise. Now it says coastal risk areas, so you're not going to get any in the West Midlands, for example. So mentioning that is not worth any marks. Basically, what we want is predominantly along the east coast, southeast coast. It's more patchy on the southwest coast. That's the kind of pattern that we're after. You know, that the largest areas are located here. There are fewer areas in West Wales, for example. So again, the only tricky bit with that one is just making sure that you have actually got the right map to have a look at. Okay, then we come to typical question, a beer group question about this, we're sure. And it says, so one appropriate stylo graph to present the data shown in 2.4. Now, if you look at it, it is, let's come back to that data, if that's okay. If you look at the data, it is numbers. It's not percentages, and it has got locations, so that might be something to bear in mind. Okay, so if I go through them, I can work out which one it is. A scatter graph showing a line of best fit. We only use a scatter graph when you've got two variables. Say, for example, you were looking at distance from the CBD and house prices. We've only got one variable, we've got the number of properties. A series of block graphs, one for each. Well, that makes sense. We've got raw data, we haven't got percentages, so that's probably the right answer. And pie charts. As soon as I know I haven't got percentage data, it can't be pie charts. So that has to be the series of block graphs. And remember, block graphs is just what the exam board calls bar charts for you and me. Okay, one reason why that might be appropriate, very simple. Block graphs are easy to draw and to compare. Okay, or you could have that they show numerical data, whereas pie charts show percentages or something like that. Right, then you get down to some other short questions here. One reason why it's difficult for individuals to reduce the threat of climate change. So this might be they don't have the money to put solar panels on, they haven't been educated, it's a global problem, anything like that. Why government in the UK may wish to reduce the threat of climate change? Well, this is actually quite a hard one, in fact 6 marks, so you really want to try and give 3 reasons. And actually when we did this as a mock, people didn't do very well. So my 3 reasons would be the UK signed up to international agreements and wants to honour them, and if it doesn't, other countries won't. It might be that it's worried about the effects climate change will have on people. So for example, the cost of flooding may actually be so excessive that actually reducing climate change is better. It might simply be for humanitarian reasons. It doesn't want to contribute, wants to reduce the risk of drought and famine in other countries. So try and give 3 reasons. You can probably get 4 marks just by giving 2 reasons, but if you give 3 on a 6-mark question, you're not going to go wrong. We come back to the next 8-mark question. This one you notice doesn't have 4 marks attached to it, straight 8 marks. So there's no spag on this one. Look at the question. The need to create economic growth in NICs, such as India, far outweighs any concern about climate change. Explain your reasons. Again, 3 paragraphs of this one. Paragraph 1 would be, well, why does India want to have economic growth? And you might talk about reducing poverty, you might talk about the positive multiplier effect that industry can create, you might think about the growing economy, you might think how it's unfair that countries like Britain got rich by polluting the world and India can't. Your second paragraph is you disagree. So actually you're going to talk about the effects of climate change, how actually it's a global problem, how it's going to cause drought and famine, and you can use specific examples of natural disasters. And then your third paragraph would be your conclusion, which is probably India does need to develop, but actually perhaps countries like Britain should be supporting them by funding solar power farms or wind farms or sharing technology and things. So again, 3 paragraphs, yes, no, conclusion. Now that takes us on to section 3, which is a section that you may or may not have seen. So again, this is environmental challenges. This is looking at ecosystem stuff you've done. Also includes water. And this one again is a good example of an OS map and a location question. Again, don't need to get too worried about it, but it's important you can do the basics. So it's talking about site of Martin Mere, which is the wetland ecosystem you can see in the photo 3.3. You'll see it's number 4, so it's located there, and you'll see an OS map. And the very first question, okay, is describe the location of Martin Mere, use map 3.1 or map 3.2 in your answer. So it's quite important that you're using one or the other. Well, that's nice and easy. 3.1, if we have a look, Martin Mere is located there. I would simply say that that's located in northwest England to the sort of northeast of Wales. I've got my 2 marks quite comfortably. However, if I wanted to, I could also use the OS map. Now, again, let's drive the location. It is located here. So I could, if I wanted to, give the 4-figure grid reference. So remember, come along the bottom, so that's 42. I come up, it's 14. So I could say it's in 4214. If I wanted to be really specific, I would say it's in 42. I'd come across 8 or 9 temps, so I'd probably say 42.9. And then I'd come up and I'd say 14.4. So 42.9, 14.4. Or I might actually have a look and think, well, actually, annoyingly, I can't see a name of that road, but it is near that village of Tarlescoff. So I might say it is approximately 500 metres, again using the scale down here. And what would that be? That would be northwest of Tarlescoff. So that's how I'd approach that question. So what's the next one? Let's have a look. Now, the next one is going to be looking at the grid references. Okay, so it says, give the 4-figure grid reference for the village of Rufford. And if we have a quick look, we will see the village of Rufford is located here. So again, 4 figures come across the bottom always, come up. So that's 45. And then when I come along the stairs, along the corridor, up the stairs, again, bottom left-hand corner would be 15. So that'd be 45, 15. Now the next question asks for the 6-figure grid reference of the visitor centre, which is just there. And I think I've already said this already, which is 42, come across 9 temps, so 42.9, 14, go up 4 temps, 4, so 42.9, 144. Okay, so next question asks me to describe the relief. Now, relief is a fancy word that means how flat or steep or hilly, basically the shape of the land. So it's saying in map 3.2 and 3.3. Again, they've done this so that if you're not 100% sure on the maps, you can use the photograph. So let's go and have a look at them. So looking at the map, what we can see is there are almost no contour lines. In fact, I'm struggling to see any whatsoever. There's just one down there, which is, I think, showing 10 metres. Now, contour lines tell me the height. Now, if there's lots of contour lines, that means the land is very steep. If there's few contour lines, that means the land is flat. This is as flat as a pancake. There's no contour lines there whatsoever. So actually, the relief is very flat. It's also very low. I can see that because the contour lines are at 10 metres. So it's low-lying, flat land. If I look at the photo, what I can see is, I can see that that's a pretty good description actually. But I can also see that there's lakes there as well. So if I wanted to, I might say low-lying, flat land with lakes. That seems to be a pretty good answer. Okay, so we've moved on to the next question, and this one is now looking at biomes. It's got a map there showing the tundra and the tropical rainforest. First question is, what's the correct definition of a biome? And a biome is basically a large ecosystem. So a large area named after the dominant type of vegetation found at sea level? No. A biome is a unique region where different climates can be found from north to south? Nope. A biome is a global land area that's characterised by the plant, animals and climate in that area. I'd go for that, although I'd argue actually tropical rainforest was a biome as much as, say, coral reef would be, but out of those three, that would be it. Describe distribution of tropical rainforests. Use map 3.4. Now, this is a very typical describe distribution question, and there's some top tips you can get from this. First of all, what I would do is I would have a look and see what information has been provided. Examiners only provide information that's useful. So obviously there's a key down here, and I'm interested in the tropical rainforest. But actually the only other thing that's really on here are these things. So that's a blooming great big clue that that's what I need to be using. So you are expected, I guess, to be able to name the continents. That would help as well. But basically, where are they located? Well, if we have a look, we'll see, again, the other thing to do is just to run your finger over where they are. And what you'll see is that they are found between the tropics, concentrated on the equator, with probably the largest amount in the Amazon basin in Brazil and South America, basically, or North South America, Central Africa, and sort of Southeast Asia. But if you were to basically say between the tropics, on the equator, you've pretty much got 4 marks. Okay, so we're looking now at the next question. This one's looking at a food web, sort of nutrient cycle. And again, fairly typical question. Now this one asks you here to name your chosen ecosystem. Now you've actually looked at 2 ecosystems. You've looked at tropical rainforest, but the most important one is the savanna. Semi-arid grassland to be technical, but savanna is absolutely fine. Now the reason that's the most important is because that's the one that everyone in the course has to do, so they can ask you questions about that. They won't ask you questions specifically about tropical rainforest because that's not a compulsory case study. Now, what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to name these. Now, tropical grasslands, there's a clue in the name, the producer is grass. Nice and simple. Primary consumer would be something like a zebra. A secondary consumer is something that eats those, so that might be something like a leopard or a jackal or something like that, hyena. And then finally, the tertiary consumer is the top dog, would be something like a lion. So you need to make sure for your ecosystem you can actually name those. Right, then it says describe 3 characteristics of the climate for the ecosystem you've named above. Now again, if there's climate that you're going to learn, I would learn, well, there's 3 you need to learn: the UK climate, the tropical rainforest climate, or the equatorial climate as it's called, and the savanna climate. And the savanna climate is the one you would need to do for this. And basically, the 3 things is that it's hot all year round, it has a long dry season, and it has a short wet season are the 3 points. And you might want a bit more detail to that. You might want to look on your knowledge organisers. The best answers will talk about the temperature, the amount of rain. Amount of rain would be about 600 millimetres of rain, but it falls in the sort of summer months as it was in that wet season. So that would be the characteristics that we're after there. Like I say, the other 2 climates you will need to be able to talk about are the British climate, which is unfortunately wet all year round, something in the region of, anything from 50 to 100 millimetres a month, and average temperatures ranging from a peak of about 20 in June to about 3 degrees in winter in January. So make sure you've got those sort of things in your head. Okay, as we move down, we've then got our 3 sort of biomes here, and you can see the how the rainfall changes as you move away from the equator. Describe how the changes in vegetation from A to B are influenced by climate. Right, okay. Could look at this and you could panic, but basically, look, the answer's in front of you. Look at the amount of rain. Okay. Look at the amount of vegetation. It really is as simple as saying that as there is less rain, the vegetation becomes less dense, the vegetation becomes shorter, and if anything, it becomes less varied as well, as less species as you go through there. So, nice, easy question. If we then come down further, you've then got a question here where it says explain why human activities lead to damage of ecosystems. It's 6 marks. To get the top band here, I expect you to name some ecosystems. That could be the Amazon, that could be the Savannah, but it could be coral reefs, it could be any ecosystem that you know of, and you just need to give some examples. And again, I would just give 3 examples. So for example, I might start with the Amazon, and I might talk about logging, and I would say that logging damages the ecosystem because you're cutting down trees, which is habitat for animals. You might talk about how it's removing nutrients from the ecosystem, and you might talk about how the removal of trees causes or reduces the amount of interception, so it washes the soil away. You might talk about pollution. So you might talk about how pollution from ships can damage coral reef, killing the animals, for example. You could talk about climate change and how that's changing weather patterns. So there's a whole host of things, but the secret here is to try and actually name some. You could, for example, the Savannah, you could talk about over-farming causing soil degradation, or tourists distracting and disturbing animals, or poachers killing animals. So there's actually tons there. It's a real scattergun type question. So 3 or 4 examples, and try and have the example and then explain how it affects it. So poaching kills rare animals, danger of them becoming extinct. Deforestation destroys trees, less protection from interception, so the soil's eroded. So try and have those, if you like, chains of reasoning, as Miss Waugh calls them, or so what chains, as I often call them. So try and make sure on a 6-mark question you're giving 3 examples. Okay, so finally, name one ecosystem which is being managed for a sustainable future. Predict how successful the management scheme is likely to be in creating a sustainable future for your ecosystems. Justify your reasoning. We'd expect you here to talk about probably tropical rainforest, and we'd pick one of the tropical rainforest parks that you looked at. What I'd expect you to do here, again, is sort of probably 3 paragraphs. Tell me what the ecosystem is. Tell me what the name of the park is. So I think you've looked at, say, one in Central America. Explain what they're doing. That would be the first paragraph. Tell me why it's good. Tell me why it's possibly not going to work. Reasons why it might be good. Is it controlling visitor numbers? It's stopping poaching. It's stopping illegal logging. On the negative side, it may be that it's suffering from a lack of funding. It might be that it's too small, and it might be that actually it's not creating as much wealth as logging would do. So again, you will need to know one management, and I say that should be the tropical rainforest one. So that is the end of the exam paper. So just to quickly recap, this exam paper covers absolutely everything you've done except fieldwork. Okay, so there won't be any questions on fieldwork here, but it covers all the knowledge. There are 3 sections. You should aim to spend 35 minutes on each one. Possibly a tiny fraction more than the first one, but keep it to 35 minutes. That is roughly a minute a mark. Ignore the spag. What that will do will give you hopefully 6 or 7 minutes to go back through and just check you haven't missed anything out. Make sure you've got a calculator, make sure you've got a ruler, make sure you've got a pen and a pencil. Make sure you read the questions. And if you can do that, you should be absolutely fine. So I hope this has been useful. If you have any questions about this, come and find me Monday, come and email me. And all I can do is wish you the best of luck. Cheers.